Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer Lias, and I'm going to be discussing about the chapter 1, that strategy and strategic objectives for tourism, hospitality, and event organization. First, we have here the introduction and chapter overview. Strategic thinking and strategic management can be viewed as the most important activities undertaken by any business or public sector organization. Strategic decisions are the key decisions which have to be taken by any organization. And from the strategic decisions which establish the framework, a series of more detailed operational decisions can be made. How skillfully these activities are carried out will determine the eventual long-term success or failure of the organization. In this chapter, the basic concepts of strategy are introduced. Definitions of the word strategy are discussed, and we then explore the levels of decision-making in successful strategic management. These are defined, and the links between the levels are discussed. Finally, we discuss the nature of strategic objectives, who is responsible for setting them, and what they are essentially about. So here I have the learning objectives. After studying this chapter, the students should be able to first define the strategy and strategic management. The second, explain Mintzberg's 5P's framework of strategy. Distinguish between strategic and tactical operational decisions. And lastly, explain the most typical of objectives. Explain the most typical types of objectives that are sought through strategic management and how they might be written. Okay, firstly, we have the definition of between the strategy and strategic management. So here, what is strategy? So when we say strategy is about making you think ahead regarding key issues affecting organizations. And so the other one is strategic management. So when we say also strategic management, it is about giving you concepts, frameworks, tools, and techniques to help you do so. So strategy is more on like planning, right? In a business, there's a lot of business. I mean, all of the businesses in every industry or every sector, they always have strategy. Strategy helps you succeed in your business. That's how you reach to the top, because of your strategy. When we say strategic management, this is like beyond planning. This is when you say planning and apply it at the same time. So it gives you concept. So what are the concepts when you are trying to think of strategy, right? What are its frameworks and the tools and techniques? So strategic management is how you will manage your strategy. Yeah. And we have also here, strategy is the determination of the basic long-term goals and objectives of an enterprise, and the adoption of courses of action and the allocation of resources necessary for carrying out these goals. So that's according to Chandler about his perception of what is strategy for him. So that's from Chandler, 1962. Next, we have here the elements of strategy. So we have here four elements of strategy, and these are determination of the basic long-term goals and objectives concerns the conceptualization of coherent and attainable strategic objectives. So when we say determination, that's when we are very into our business. So let's say, for example, we do build our business. We actually start for the basic, or the very basic, or the very low kind of, how do you call it, a very low kind of position. So you better start in a level 1. Then if you're very determined to be a successful entrepreneur or business or companies owners like that, you gotta think of what are the strategies that could build up your companies to a long term, to become a long term, and not just focusing on a short term. And the second one, we have the adoption of courses of action. Refers to the actions taken to arrive at the objectives that have been previously set. And this is when the actions taken to arrive at the objectives that have been previously set. Yeah, and the third one is the allocation of resources. This refers to the fact that there is likely to be a cost associated with the actions required in order to achieve objectives. So if the course of action is not supported with adequate levels of resource, then the objective will be not accomplished. That is right. So if there is no action at all in your from your resources, from the facts that you are putting into in your businesses, so there is no accomplish at all. So it's like you're playing out of your curiosity, or nagduwa-duwa lang ka dira kay lagi like trial and error pa. But in any kind of businesses, when it comes to strategy, there is always a risk, and also there is always trial and error. But in those errors and those risks, you can actually learn from it to become better. Aside from the elements of strategy, we also have 4 resources key categories. So what are the 4 resources of key categories? So we have financial resources. When we say financial resources, it is money for capital, investment, and working capital. Sources include shareholders, bankers, bondholders. So financial resources, it's all about money, cash in hand, or anything that has something to do with cash. That's what it says, financial resources. Secondly, we have the human resources, or HR. So human resources is people who are working in the office. So we have accounting staff, we have the marketing, and we also have the personnel. So these are appropriately skilled employees to add value in operations and to support those that add value. So these are the supporting employees in marketing, accounting, and personnel. The third one, we have the physical or the tangible resources. When we say tangible resources, those are the things that you can see, you can taste, you can feel. Those that has applied the 5 human senses, those are tangible. But when it comes to resources, physical resources are like the land, the buildings, plant, equipment, stocks of production, transport equipment, and etc. Those are the tangible resources or the physical resources. Last, we have the intellectual, intangible resources. So when we say tangible, there's also what we call intangible. So intangible is quite the opposite of tangible. Okay? So intangible are the inputs that cannot be seen or felt, but which are essential for continuing business success. For example, know-how, legally defensible patents and license, brand names, registered designs, logos, secret formulations and recipes, business, contract, networks, database, and etc. So those are the examples of intangible resources. Here, let's go down to Mintzberg's 5 Ps. So Mintzberg suggested that nobody can claim to own the word strategy, and that the term can legitimately be used in several ways. A strategy can be a ploy. A strategy can be a ploy. A ploy means generally taken to mean a short-term strategy and is concerned with the detailed tactical actions that will be taken. The second one is a ploy. No, rather a plan. So a plan is probably the way in which most people use the word strategy. So when we say strategy, it applies the plan. That's what I've said earlier. So when you strategize, you plan. So it tends to imply something that is intentionally put in place and its progress is monitored from the start to a predetermined finish. Okay? Another one, we have a pattern of behavior. So when we say a pattern of behavior in Mintzberg's strategy, it is one in which progress is made by adopting a consistent form of behavior. So it is unlikely plans and ploys, patterns just happen as a result of the consistent behavior. So when we say pattern strategies, when it comes to behavior, it is more on like consistent, more on like the progress by doing or by adopting the consistent form of behavior. Next, we have a position in respect to others. So in position strategy is appropriate when the most important issue to an organization is perceived to be how it relates or is positioned in respect to its competitors or its markets. So the example of this one is the customers, right? In other words, the organization wishes to achieve or defend to a certain position. And the last one, we have a perspective. So in perspective are about changing the culture. Usually the members of the organization itself, the beliefs and the feel, the way of looking at the world. So this is when how you look the world. This is called perspective. So it is about let's say for example, when it comes to business, so when a certain trends and you want to apply it to your business just to attract more customers, and more customers, more profit, and more money, more income. Yeah. And next we have the comparison of strategic, tactical, and operational level decisions. Strategic decisions, which are our primary focus, are concerned with the acquisition of sustainable competitive advantage in a commercial organization, the setting of long-term objectives, the formulation, evaluation, selection, and monitoring of strategies to achieve these objectives. Strategic decisions normally have a number of characteristic features in that they are made by senior managers, affect the whole organization, are medium to long-term in nature, are complex, and often based upon uncertain or incomplete information. First, we have the tactical decisions, are concerned with how strategic level objectives are to be met and how strategies are implemented. They are dependent upon the overall strategy and involve tuning and adjustment. They are usually made at the head of business, unit, department, or functional area level, and they have an effect only on parts of the organization. They are normally medium term in time scale, semi-complex, and usually involve some uncertainty but not as much as a strategic level. So here we have the operational decisions. These are concerned with the shorter term objectives of the business and with its day-to-day management. They are dependent upon strategy and tactics. These decisions are made at junior managerial or supervisory level, are based on a high degree of certainty, and are not complex. Next, we have the types of objectives and how they might be written. The objectives can be written in a closed manner in that they are stated in quantitative terms and are specific in relation to form and timescale, or an open manner in that they are stated in qualitative terms and are general form of timescale. So when we say quantitative, it is more on like words. So when we say, quantitative is more on like numeric or numbers. Qualitative, it's more on like words. Okay? So objectives are essential to the successful accomplishment of the managerial function in any formal organization in that they provide a sense of direction, provide a standard of measurement and a means of controlling performance, and project an image of the organization's style. And here we have the objective writing is a crime. Not crime like you commit a crime, like you go to jail, but crime as in C for communicable, R is for realistic, I internally consistent, and M measurable, E is for explicit. Next, we have the economic objective, are those that can be measured in financial ways. So economic objectives, when we say economic objectives, it is about the numbers, whether it's the economic are low or high, depending on the supply and demand. Next, we have the social objectives. So when we say social objectives, a statement that details a specific desired outcome of a project that is related to the interactions of individuals, groups, and institutions within a society. So when we say social objectives, it's interactions of individuals, groups. So a social objective means you interact with other people, not just you by yourself, because that's not social. That's not called social at all. It's called soliloquy, like you're talking to your own self, which is not called being sociable. So when you say social is when you interact with other people. It could be your friend or your schoolmate or schoolwork. So that's how you call it social. And the next one, we have growth or market share objectives. So the economic objectives and this one, the growth or market share, is quite relatable, because when we say economic, like what I've said earlier, it is about the how's the economy going or doing, right? It's about if the economy is losing due to the supply and demand, or it could be the acts of God, like just like karon nga pandemic, so the economy is very slow or very low because of the pandemic. The pandemic messes everything up. Yes, that is why we actually kind of surviving because of this, and that we don't have enough budget because of the pandemic. And the same as the growth or market share objectives. So this is when concerning growth and expansion become among the most important. This is especially true of businesses who must grow and maintain market position in order to keep up with or keep ahead of competitors. So with this one, the only thing that is growing when it comes to business nowadays are the malls, maybe even the stock markets is not that very high. because of, like what I said earlier, it's because of the COVID. So since COVID hit, everything has changed, and it actually affected everything, the living of the society, and also the growth of the market, which is very, very bad. Next, we have the competitive advantage objectives. So competitive advantage, this is when you compete from your business to another businesses. So competitive applies when you investigate or when you reconsider another competitor's resources. So when you found out that your competitor do this and do that, you should actually consider it by doing it to yourself, but without copying tanan gyud nga nilang ilang gibuhat, because if it's like a paperwork, it's called plagiarism. But I'm not quite sure about the term of it, since it's action. Yeah, but you're not supposed to copy any other competitor resources, like copied everything, because they might sue you because you copy their resources. You just have to make it as your reference, so that you'll be able to have an idea for yourself to apply it to your own business. So let's go to the next topic, which is the introduction to strategy for tourism, hospitality, and events. So we have here the introduction and chapter overview. Formulating tourism, hospitality, and event strategy represents a complex set of challenges for managers operating in these sectors because of the nature of the products being sold and because of the distinctiveness of the environment in which these sectors exist. In particular, the strategy is informed by the fact that THE, so THE here stands for the tourism, hospitality, and events, products and services, rather than goods, physical products, which has certain implications for managers in these sectors. Furthermore, the products have certain specific features which, if not unique, are certainly highly distinctive characters in comparison with other service sectors. In this chapter, we consider the nature of service products and the particular distinctive characters of THE products. An understanding of these features and the managerial implications that flow from them is necessary, as it informs and underpins the strategy formulation process. Next, we have the learning objectives. After studying this chapter, the students should be able to define goods and services, describe the key characteristics of service products and how they are relevant to THE organizations, provide a brief explanation of the structure of the tourism, hospitality, and event sector, and explain the linkages between them. So here are the goods and services. The goods are the tangible. We talked about this one earlier from the previous slides. What are or is the tangible products? And the services are the intangible products. So tangible again is those are the things that you can see, that you can feel, you can touch, you can taste. Those are the tangible. When we say intangible, is quite the opposite of the intangible. Cannot be seen, cannot be touched, cannot be felt. So those are the examples of intangible. Next, we have the service product characteristics. So the first one, we have the intangibility. So I have discussed this one just a minute ago. So these are the services cannot be normally seen, touched, smelled, tasted, tried on for a size, or stored in a shelf prior to purchase. So these are the, like I said, quite the opposite of the tangibility. Inseparability means those are in businesses or in hospitality management and tourism. These are the kind of goods and services that you cannot separate. That's why it's called inseparability. And next one, we have the perishability. So this one is from the root word perishable. So perishability is the characteristic of products and services that do not allow for the product or service to be sold for sale at a future date. So let's say, for example, when it comes to food. So when your food is over its shelf life, let's say for example a donut. A donut is the shelf life of the donut is, let's say for example, 8 hours a day, and you still display it in your store or you still display it in your shelves that this is still fresh and this is still be eaten, but you yourselves know that this donut is beyond 8 hours, beyond its shelf life, so you cannot sell it to your customers. When it comes to perishability, you have to dispose it because it's beyond its shelf life. So that's the meaning of perishability. So when it comes to services, when we say perishability, when it comes to services, it is when, let's say for example, in my hotel, I have a promo, right? Like for today, I have a promo like a birthday celebrant. If you're a birthday celebrant, you can dine in our restaurant without paying any penny. That's my promo for today, just for today. But but in the morning or in the following day, you cannot sell it anymore because you can only sell it through yesterday, which is the day from today. No, today, the day before today. So it's kanang kuan na dili na gyud siya pwede because kailangan na nimo siyang baguhon because of tungod kay kanara siya nimong adlaw gi promo. So never gyud nang mahitabo nga unless kung ang restaurant or ang management mo extend ana. Yes. So when we say perishability, kanang ma-perishable, whether goods and services. Next, we have heterogeneity. The quality of services may vary from one service provider to another or may vary for the same service provider at different times of the week. So next, I have here the ownership. Ownership, when a customer buys a manufactured product, there will be usually a document. So let's say for example, in a restaurant, right? So when we order, the waiter or the wait staff will get our order from his or her order slip. So that wait staff he or she will send it to the kitchen, the order slip. So the kitchen will cook and prepare all the customer's order. When it comes to billing, your waitress or your waiter will give you your receipt, so your bills or your check. So that's when you pay. So in ownership, that food, you are obliged to pay for it, whether food or rooms or any possessions you might have, as long as you have a receipt or proof of document that you owned it under your name on it, that's called ownership. Next, we have the industry we are considering. The THE can be viewed as comprising 6 component sectors. we have the hospitality, events management, attractions, transport, travel organizations, destination. So here, okay, hold on one sec. Yeah. So when we say hospitality, these are the hotels, lodgings, guest house, villas, apartments, camping, marinas, yacht, cruise ships. Those are the hospitality sectors. When we say events management, these are sport events, business events, festivals, exhibitions, conference, conventions, what else? Concerts. These are the events management. When we say also attractions, these are the tourist spots, right? These are the museum, the theme parks, zoos, gardens, art galleries. So those are the attractions. And when we say transport or transportations, these are the things that you can ride, like airplane, buses, railways, airlines, or those are the transport. When we say travel organizations, those are the things that organize your travels. Let's say, for example, travel tours. Those are travel organizers. Retail and businesses, internet comparison, and incentive travel organizations or organizers. So those are the examples of travel organizers. Next, we have the destination organization. When we say destination is og asa ka mo adto, asa imong padulungan. Let's say, for example, national baron, regional baron, or the local tourist offices, or the tourism association. Ano siya? Destination attractions or organizations rather. So these are the sectors and subsectors of tourism, hospitality and events, or THE. So these from this one, the hospitality, events, travel organizers, destination organization, and attractions, these sectors need the transportation, because you cannot go to the hospitality you chose, you cannot go to the events, you cannot go to the attractions, you cannot go to your travel organizers and your destination without the transportation, unless you want to go there and just by walking. So kapoy kaayo kung mag-ingon ana no. So that is why we need the transportation with regards to these sectors. The next one is the organizations, the operational context, competencies, resources, and competitive advantage. Introduction and chapter overview. So the nature of operations is such though that they are very specific to each organizations. No two organizations are identical. However, they are similar in that they are trying to configure and coordinate their operational resources and processes in such a way that they add value and in so doing achieve an advantage over competitors, competitive advantage. This chapter concentrates on developing an understanding of the major factors governing the level of performance of the business, namely its resources, competencies, and its value-adding activities. So here we have the learning objectives. After studying this chapter, the students should be able to first explain the concepts of core competencies, resources, and the relationship between them. Explain the core competencies and its distinctive capabilities. defining value added and its process, defining value chain, explain the concept of the profit chain and how it relates to THE organization. The sources of competitive advantage in all industries, including THE, some organizations are more successful than others regardless of whether the average profitability for the sector is relatively high or low. The superior performance conceivably possess something special that competitors do not have access to that allows them to outperform their rivals. The sources of competitive advantage lie in combining the superior application of competencies or the skills, the development of superior resources or the assets. The assets means it could be your company. Your company has assets when it comes to its services and goods, and it could be your employees. So yeah, those two can be called as assets or considered as assets. Lastly, in creating value for consumer. Competence, core competence and resources. A competence is an attribute or collection of attributes possessed by all or most of the organizations in sector of industry. A core competence is an attribute or collection of attributes specific to a particular organization which enables it to produce above industry average performance. A resource is an input employed in the activities of the business. So here are the competencies, core competencies and resources. Without competencies, a business cannot enter or survive in the industry. That's true, because we need in business industry we need competencies. Competencies develop from resources and embody skills, technology, or know-how. Core competencies arise from the way in which the organization has employed its competencies and resources more effectively than its competitors. The result of a distinctive capability is an output which customers value higher than those of competitors. Employing resources, success rests in large part upon the efficiency by which the business converts its resources or the inputs into outputs. So that is what you call resources. Now let's move on to the core competencies and distinctive capabilities. According to K 1995, presents a slightly different explanation, arguing that competitive advantage is based upon what he terms distinctive capability. According to K, distinctive capability can develop from 4 sources. So the first one is architecture. Architecture means a network of relationship within or around the organization. The relationships may be among employees. So employees are those internal architecture. I'm sorry. With their suppliers and customers. External architecture are among a group of organizations engaged in related activities networks. Next, we have the reputation. So in business, reputation is very important, no? That's how you actually attract more customers. If your business has good reputation, then nobody can steal that from you, not even your customers or not even your competitors. In service markets, reputation is an extremely important contributor to consumer choice of product. But given the intangibility of the product, reputation is usually built up slowly and at some cost as consumers gain experience. Given in the high value and public pro level of travel products, reputation can easily be damaged, for example, through disaster. So so reputation is very important in every kind of businesses or companies. Next one is the strategic assets. The strength of market position or dominance of a market is often based upon the possession of strategic assets. They can be of three types. First, the organization may benefit from monopoly position in a market. Second, an organization may have already incurred the costs of supplying a market, which inhibits the ability of new entrants to compete effectively. And third, some companies may benefit from the possession of licenses or regulation that prevent competition. Next one is the innovation. Through innovation, companies are often capable of providing a distinctive product or reducing costs. However, innovations can often be copied, and the additional returns are often not forthcoming from the innovative company. Here we are going to define the value adding. Value chain analysis from Porter 1985 seeks to provide an understanding of how much value an organization's activities add to its products and services compared to the costs of the resources used in their production. Although it has been applied widely in the manufacturing sector, several writers have applied the model successfully to a service setting. According to Poon in 1993, for example, adapts the model to the travel and tourism industry. Fleischer and Bensosan in 2003 offer a useful resource in devoting a whole chapter of their book to an application and critique of value chain analysis. Value is measured in terms of the price that customers are willing to pay for the products. Value added can be increased in two ways. It can be increased by number one, changing customer perceptions of the products so that they are willing to pay a higher price than for similar products produced by other businesses, or number two, reducing operating costs below those of competitors. So what is value chain? It is a set of activities that a firm operating in a specific industry performs in order to deliver a valuable product. Products could be goods or the services for the market. The idea of the value chain is based on the process view of organizations. The idea of seeing a manufacturing organizations as a system made up of subsystems, each with inputs, transformation processes, and outputs. Inputs, transformation processes, and outputs involve the acquisition and consumption of resources: money, labor, materials, equipment, buildings, land, administration, and management. How value chain activities are carried out determines cost and affects profits. Next is the service profit chain. Establishes relationships between profitability, customer loyalty, and employee satisfaction, loyalty, and productivity. The links in the chain are as follows. Profit and growth are stimulated primarily by customer loyalty. Loyalty is a direct result of customer satisfaction. Satisfaction is largely influenced by the value of services provided to customer. Value is created by satisfied, loyal, and productive employees. Employee satisfaction, in turn, results primarily from high-quality support, services, and policies that enable employees to deliver results to customers. So here I have the links in the service profit chain. So we have the internal service quality. These are the workplace design, the job design, employee selection and development, employer awards and recognition, tools, and serving customers. Next, we have the employee satisfaction, employee retention, employee productivity, external service value. These are the service concept results for customers. Customer satisfaction, the service designed and delivered to meet targeted customers' needs. The retention, repeat, business referral, those are the customer loyalty. The revenue growth, and the profitability. So before I end my discussion or my topics, I wanted to leave you this quote: "The essence of strategy is choosing what not to do," from Professor Michael Porter. And that would be all. I hope you guys understood and comprehended my discussion. Thank you everyone for listening and have a good day.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'll be talking about tourism, hospitality, and event organizations in the human resource context. So, human resources, what are the importance of human resource in tourism and hospitality and events? So, the sectors of THE are labor intensive service sectors in which the human factor is often the key differentiator between different competing organizations. Employees or group of employees are often critical to an organization's strategic success and thus represent what is often referred to in the literature as a critical success factor or CSF. So people are an important resource to most organizations, but in service-based organizations in particular, it is often the human resources, example, people that represent the key factor in delivering successful performance. So the people or the employees are the very factor plays a very big role in whatever successful event or let's say business in the hospitality and tourism industry. So whatever their roles are and how they perform it plays a very big role to its success. Next, the consideration of human resource issues is vital to the successful implementation of strategy in most organizations operating in THE context. As with the other functional areas of organizations we consider in subsequent chapters, finance and marketing. We are the most interested in the key areas of human resource management. In that key, we have an impact on the successful formulation and implementation of strategy. In the context of tourism and hospitality, the extensive literature, see, for example, Kolslovan et al. 2010, relating to the management of human resource issues is very much interwoven with hospitality, often viewed as a constituent component of tourism, or vice versa. Both sectors often share similar characteristics when employing staff, and many of these characteristics are shared by event sector. These issues are considered in the next section. Now, it is explained here that the hospitality and the tourism industry are interrelated because of they share the same industry wherein their skills and knowledge are being shared, and thus the people or the guests can experience somehow a related service coming from both the hospitality and the tourism industry. So the event sector, though sharing many characteristics with tourism and hospitality, is also often distinctive in certain ways. So work is usually geared towards a particular point in time when the events are taking place, or the event may be repeated at regular or irregular intervals. These facets of events often gives rise to job insecurity, high recruitment costs, and relatively poor working conditions as pressure builds before during the event. So next, volunteers often form an important part of the workforce, and indeed, many events, such as the 2012 London Olympic Games, would not be feasible without the involvement of large-scale volunteer workforce. Now, in the human resource, um, in the THE or in tourism and hospitality and events industry, somehow volunteers play a very big role in in performing their jobs, especially to big events that needs a lot of workforce. So that's why volunteers are very essential. Staff numbers have often had to quickly expand and then contract. Hanlon and Jago, 2004, developed the concept of the pulsating organization to describe many organizations in the event sector. Yes, so as the staff numbers expand, so as their contracts in the event sectors in organizing any event. Next, the factors outlined above give rise to specific challenges for managers in the event sector. Bodin et al. 2012 stated these challenges might include obtaining paid off of the right caliber given the short-term nature of the employment offered. Next, working to short timescales to hire and select staff and to implement effective staff training, shedding staff after event quickly. And if volunteers are part of the workforce, specific challenges include sourcing sufficient volunteers, quality control, asserting management control, integration, and cooperation with the paid employees, motivation, and training. So these are also the challenges if you are a, a volunteer to in the industry. So you also have to be a part of the workforce, of course, because the industry needs your help and to exert more service from the volunteers. So they also have to be sufficient. They would know how to handle quality control, also asserting management control, integration, and as well as having them trained to um be knowledgeable about these workforce and challenges. So employment and working conditions in tourism, hospitality, and events. THE represents a sizable proportion of worldwide employment, and though comparisons are difficult, it is likely that these sectors employ more than the automotive industry, but slightly less than education, and employment opportunities are continuing to increase. The World Travel and Tourism Council estimates that when the wider impacts of the industry are taken into account in terms of the supply chain, investment, and consumer spending, travel and tourism is estimated to support almost 255 million jobs, about one in every 12. So, with a rising, rising, um, how do you call this? With the rise of the travel and tourism, so one of its impacts is that it would help almost 255 million, it would offer 255 million jobs around the world. So with the rise of this tourism and travel, many people will be able to have a job. And yeah, it is not only the size of the workforce that is distinctive, but also its composition. The human resources which make up the workforce in the sectors are often characterized by a large proportion of female employees, a large proportion of young employees, a large number of part-time and seasonal workers, high staff turnover rates, recruitment difficulties, poor levels of training, relatively low pay, mobility of labor between different employers, and geographically working patterns involving work at night and weekends. Importance of volunteer workforce, particularly for large events. So These are the characteristic of the workforce in this sector in the THE. So yeah. Next, each of the human resource characteristics identified can raise challenges for managers working in the THE. The relatively high levels of staff turnover in many cases can be particularly problematic because it can lead to higher costs relating to additional recruitment activities, wasted training and development, and difficulties in maintaining quality standards. For example, Chalkiti and Sigala 2010 report on employee turnover rates and suggest strategies such as job rotation for retaining staff in Greece. One study in the United States, Woods et al. 1998, found that annual staff turnover in the hotel sector was running at 51.7% for frontline employees, although the figures were somehow lower for supervisory and managerial staff. As a result of the high staff turnover rates encountered, many TH employers go to great lengths to recruit the right caliber of staff and to retain and motivate them once they have been recruited. As a counterbalance to some of the perceived negative aspects of the industry sector, it can be argued that it is often viewed as an attractive industry in which to work. Indeed, traveling and working in tourism, hospitality, and events are often linked. Staff often have access to concessionary travel and accommodation rates. Opportunities are presented to attend events for meeting people and seeing something of the world, and many employees are situated in attractive surroundings. And yes, this is true. Once you are a part or an employee of the THE, these are the privileges that um you're going to experience and encounter. Most importantly, you will be able to have a an opportunity to access to concessionary travel and accommodation rates. We will have sometimes free accommodation to to the other places, and as well as with the events, we will be able to meet many famous people. And yes, these are the privileges in working in the THE. In such circumstances, the challenges for managers is to recruit and retain talented staff, take actions to motivate employees, and try to ensure an appropriate work life balance is maintained. Critically, though, employers need to pay attention to the design of jobs and roles through measures such as job enlargement, meaning by which employees' jobs are made more worthwhile and interesting, in that they are given a wider variety to tasks to carry out. Next is job rotation, by which employees rotate jobs between them so that teamwork is encouraged, knowledge and skills are gained, and everyone has to take a share of less popular tasks. Job enrichment, by which employees are given a greater deal of discretion or empowerment to make decisions. Next is job sharing, by which employees' jobs are shared between two or more employees, thereby sharing burdens and responsibilities and providing cover for staff leave or sickness absence. Next, the management of the guest employee encounter. The management of the guest customer employee encounter remains one of the most difficult but ultimately most important tasks for THE managers. Baum 1997. In fast moving markets, especially in service industries which are relatively labor intensive, it may be the ability and knowledge of people, the ability of people to learn, the ability of people to adapt to change. So these are the role of the managers, and these are the characteristics that they have to imply. Next, according to Zitham et al. 1990, there are five dimensions of service which can usefully be remembered through the acronym RATER. R for responsiveness, meaning willingness to help customers and provide prompt service. Example, problem solving by hotel reception staff, advice offered by call centers. So this is a very important um um characteristic and attitude that should be instilled if you are working in the THE, since people will be having a lot of concerns. So you must be very willing to help and be very knowledgeable about your job and how you can improve the services to the guests. Next, A for assurance, meaning knowledge and courtesy of employees and their ability to convey trust and confidence. Example, level of training for flight attendants, providing itemized bills for services delivered. So yes, assurance is plays a very important role in any businesses, or let's say in the THE industry, since we are dealing with guests that are going to um be with us now, giving them the right assurance with the services that we offer would always be a vital importance for us to have them and for them to be loyal to us. So assurance plays a very big role. Now, T for tangibles. Tangibles are appearance of physical facilities, equipment, personnel, and communication materials. Example, comfort of the hotel room, facilities at the concert venue, aeroplane passenger features. So yes, these are tangibles, meaning these are visible. These are the visible facilities in the tourism and hospitality and events industry. So it also plays a very big role. So, example, providing a very comfortable hotel room and as well as the facilities and the airplane for the tourism industry. Next, E for empathy, meaning caring, individualized attention. The company provide its customers. Example, treating each customer at a restaurant individually according to their needs, meaning we have to be very patient and at the same time we have to put ourselves in the shoes of these clients and guests for us to give them the right customer service or the good quality customer service. So empathy plays a very big role. Next, the last letter R stands for reliability. It means the ability to perform the promised service dependably and accurately. Example, trains arrival times, accuracy of bills, conference running according to schedule. So yes, so for us to have them loyal to us, we have to let them rely on us. And how, for like these examples, train arrival times, we should not keep our guests waiting for their trains, or let's say for the arrival of trains. Next, accuracy of bills. So whenever they ask for the bills when they do check out, we have to give them the exact amount and the itemized labels of the bills. Next, so the human resource audit. The purpose of HR audit. The human resource audit is an investigation into size, skills, structure, and all other issues surrounding those currently employed by the organization. The audit reviews the ability of the human resources to implement a chosen strategy, a range of strategic opinions. Once the audit has been completed, management should be able to answer the key questions. Are the human resources in the organization capable of implementing the purposed strategy? If any gaps are identified, then a human resource strategy may be put in place to close the gap. So now, what are the gaps A gap can occur in any area of human resource management. It rests upon a simple calculation. So, human resource characteristic necessary for the proposed strategy minus the current state of human resource characteristic equals the human resource gaps. Gaps can occur in particularly skills. In sectors like tourism, for example, skills gap may be identified in particular areas such as those with knowledge and experience of computer reservation systems. It may be that the audit reveals a deficit of 30 people who can operate such system, a negative gap. The task of the human resource department thus becomes to successfully appoint or retain to gain the requisite number of skilled operators. So yes, so the gaps can be the overpopulation of employees in performing such or any um any workforce. So if you have over employees, then that could be a gap. So positive, there are also positive gaps and may also be identified like surpluses of a particular type of employee. The human resource strategy thus has to put measures in place to dispose of the excess labor. Gaps may be closed by using the 5 R's individually in combination. The 5 R's are retirement, retraining, redeployment, redundancy, or recruitment. So yeah, so these are the 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 5 R's for the employees. The contents of a human resource audit. The contents of human resource audit may vary from organizations to organization depending on its size, geographic coverage, and type of activity. However, a typical audit checklist is as follows. The number of employees by a number of counting methods, the total number by division, by location, by skill type, by grade or place in hierarchy, by age or length of service, by gender, and by ethnic group. Next is employee costs, usually measured by salary costs and add-ons like benefits and taxes payable by the organization. The organizational structure and the position of employees within the structure. Next, the recruitment and selection procedures and their effectiveness. The quality and effectiveness of training and development programs used, the level of employee motivation and morale, the quality of employee or industrial relations between management and employees, the internal and external network that employees in the organization have developed, and their effectiveness for various purposes. Lastly, the monitoring of the effectiveness of existing human resource policies and control procedures. Now, these are the um, responsibilities per se for the human resource audit or of a human resource audit. So these are their um somehow the things that they are going to do in the department. So formal and informal resource audit. Formal audits may be carried out by personal specialists on a regular basis, say annually, or whenever management need to the information for the purposes of a strategic analysis. Practitioners in this area make the point that the simple following of lists, like the outline above, is only a starting point, as points of interest are raised, such as key skill deficiencies, then it is imperative that the reasons for the shortage or surplus are also examined as an integral part of the audit. So now the list here of characteristics or the the job of a human resource audit does not only limit until these um job um descriptions, but as well as it could also be um, shifted or let's say expanded. So the outcomes of a human resource audit, the problem of measurement. The various components of a human resource audit present differing problems of quantifications. We can intuitively understand that entries like employee costs, numbers, skill shortages can usually be measured by such things as days lost through strikes. Other parts of the audit present more difficulty of measurement. So critical success factors. It is usually the case that there are one or more reasons why superior performers in an industry are in the position that they are. These key reasons for success are called critical success factors. Some companies have uniquely skilled employees, such as particularly skilled financiers, product development specialists, or staff selected and trained to give exceptional levels of customer service. In these cases, the CSF is a human resource. In other businesses, the CSF might be a unique location, a brand image, an inviolable reputation, a legally protected patent or license, or a unique production of processes or technology. This is not to say that other parts of the organizations are unimportant, merely that the CSF is the key cause of the success. Organizational culture. The culture of any group of people that is that set of beliefs, customs, practices, and ways of thinking that they have come to share with each other through being and working together. So now, meaning culture at work also plays a very vital importance because it is what we call the shared beliefs, customs, and practices. And it is also very important for us to have a, a peaceful working environment wherein we do understand because we do share same beliefs and practices. Why is culture important? Culture is important because it can and does affect all aspects of an organization's activities. The metaphor of human personality may help us to understand this. Some people's personality means they are motivated, sharp, exciting to be with, etc. Others are dull, tedious, apathetic, and conservative. These personality features will affect all aspects of our lives. So whatever we do believe, whatever we feel, whatever our personality is, plays a very vital role also in our lives and as well as and more importantly at work. So if we'll have a positive personality, then it would also help you have a good performance at work and vice versa. The same is true of an organization's personality. Culture is important because of the following non exhaustive reasons. Culture can have an influence on employee motivation, the attractiveness of the organization as an employer, and hence the rate of staff turnover, employee morale and goodwill, productivity and efficiency, the quality of work, the nature of the employee industrial relations, the attitude of employee in the workplace, and innovation and creativity. So if we do have shared um, personality cultures in in whatever organization, so these are the positive effects on the employees and in the workplace. So the development of a strong culture enables the organization concerned to strive to deliver consistent standards of service, but can also be used as a promotional tool not only externally to customers but also internally to employees, giving them a sense of pride and motivation. Lastly, I will be tackling about the cultural web. So one of the most commonly used ways of making sense of an organization's culture is to use the cultural web by Johnson, 1992. It is a schematic representation of the elements of an organization's culture in such a way that we can see how each element influences the paradigm. Each component is interrelated and has an impact on the overall cultural paradigm of the organization. So now, this is the cultural web. So the paradigm at the center. Now, the web is composed of stories, symbols, power structure, organizational structures, control systems, and routines and rituals. So stories. Stories are those narratives that people within the organization talk about, um, and what they tell new recruits and outsiders about the organization. The story typically recount events and people from the past and present, stories of famous victories and defeats. They tend to highlight what is considered important to the members of the organization. So now, if you are an employee, um, um, sharing stories would also play a very important role for the new recruits, because especially when these are good stories to tell, and somehow it would give motivation to the new recruit. Next, routines and rituals. Routines are the procedures for doing things within the organization. They are repeated on a regular basis to the extent they are taken as the way things are done. Rituals have a longer time frame and can be either formal and informal. So now routines are the basics. So if you are an employee and is tasked to do these things, so that's how you call a routine. And every day you're gonna do the same task for as long as you're working in the organization or in the industry. Next, symbols, symbolic aspects of organizational life concern those things that symbolize something to some people, a certain level of promotion, the company card they drive, the position of their office, their job title. In some companies, these symbols have no apparent importance at all. In others, they matter a great deal. The way that employees respond to these symbols can tell us a great deal about their culture. So now, this might not be that of importance to other industries, but symbols do play a very big role in gaining respect, since if you are in a higher position, people or the people at work or the employees would have an indication on how they would pay their respect to you, most especially if you are on a higher position. Now, if you have also these if you have cars, cars could also be a symbol for them to be motivated, and that they could not they would not limit themselves in the lowest of lows, since they can also achieve great things. Next is structure. The structure of an organization can mean more than just those formal relationships that are shown in an organization diagram. Informal structures can also exist through interpersonal relationships that transcend the formal structures. Some organizations have highly developed informal structures, while others do not. So, structures meaning these are the interpersonal relationships. So, interpersonal relationship are your relationship with your co-workers or co-employees, and how you treat each other, your the way you work together. So it does, and it is very important. Control systems, the ways in which activities are controlled, whether tight or loose, is closely aligned to culture. This has a strong link to power, distance, and nature of the activities that the organization is engaged in. Control systems, by definition, concern activity in which performance is gauged against a predetermined standard, and the method of both standard setting and monitoring performances vary significantly according to culture. Now, power structures, these are the core assumptions that contribute to the paradigm, are likely to be made by the most powerful management groupings in the organization. In some companies, these powers resides in the research department. In others, it will be the production people or from another department. In some organizations, there may be arguments about what is important between one or more groupings. So power structures is somehow in a department the the strongest department or the most powerful department, because since this is where um the the vital role or description of any organizations is. So for us, it is in the production. Next, paradigm. A paradigm is a worldview, a way of looking at the world. It is expressed in the assumptions that people make in their deep rooted beliefs. The paradigm of an organization or a national culture is important because it determines how it will behave in a given circumstance. Given a certain moral dilemma or similar choice, we might expect the paradigms of a personal person living in one country or culture lead them to arrive at different conclusions from those living in another country or culture. The, the things that cause one culture to adopt one paradigm and other culture to espouse a different one are set out in the cultural web. Power distance is the term is used to describe how removed subordinates feel from their superiors in a social meaning of the word distance. In high power distance culture, inequality is accepted. In a low power distance culture, inequalities and overt status symbols are minimized and subordinates expect to be consulted to share decisions with approachable managers. Handy's culture types, an influential writer, Charles Handy, suggested that organizational structures could be divided into four broad types: power cultures, role cultures, task cultures, and personal cultures. Power cultures are this type of organization is dominated by either a very powerful individual or a dominant small group. Role cultures, this type of culture is found in many long established organizations that have traditionally operated in stable environments. They tend to be very hierarchical and rely on established procedures, systems, and precedent. Task cultures are found in organizations engaged in activities of a non-repetitive nature, often high value, one-off tasks. Activities are normally based around flexible multidisciplinary teams containing expertise in the major discipline requirement to complete the project. Person cultures are those that exist primarily for the benefit of the members of the organizations itself, and hence they tend to be rare in commercial businesses. They can have a very different feel to the other cultures as all members of the organizations work for the benefit of themselves and other members. Miles and Snow's culture types. Since its emergence, the typology of cultural types produced by Miles and Snow has been widely used and cited in the academic literature. Miles and Snow categorize cultures into four types based on how they tend to react in strategic terms. So defenders, these organizations tend to seek a competitive advantage in terms of targeting niche markets through cost reduction and specialization. They tend to operate in stable, mature markets, and as the name suggests, they favor defending their current market share by service improvements or further cost savings. Defenders therefore tend to be centralized, have rigid control systems, and a hierarchical management structure that does not enjoy sudden change. Prospectors. These organizations enjoy the challenge of developing and introducing new products to the marketplace. They actively seek out new markets for their products. These favored strategies require organizations to constantly monitor the environment and be willing and able to respond quickly to change that may occur. To that end, they are decentralized and flexible. Analyzers. These organizations are followers and are conservative in nature. Steady growth, though, through market penetration is the favored option as this can be achieved without radical changes to structure. Moves into new markets and products only occur after extensive evaluation and market research. They learn from the mistakes of others and tend to balance power between the center and divisions with complex control systems. Reactors. Reactors are a bit like analyzers in that they tend to follow rather than innovate. They differ from analyzers in that they are less conservative and sometimes behave impulsively, having failed to fully consider the implications of their actions. These organizations may lack proper control systems and typically have a weak but dominant leader. That's all. Thank you.
Hello everyone. My name is Christian Jano Kalamba and I will be discussing Chapter 5, the financial context. Financial resources in tourism, hospitality and events context. Although tourism, hospitality and events, or also known as THA sectors, cover a wide diversity of different organizations, including tour operators, transport and accommodation providers, event organizers, destination organizations, internet intermediaries, and travel agencies. Financial management is important to all of them. There are, however, also some highly significant and distinctive features of managing finance in many THE contexts that are characteristic of the sectors and that we considered briefly. The first one is the cash management. All companies have a need to hold cash or have the ability to borrow cash. So cash is used to pay creditors or suppliers. Cash management is concerned with the investing of cash surpluses and financing of cash shortages. The second one is managing foreign exchange risk. Many businesses in THE operate internationally or across national boundaries, producing costs and revenues in various currencies. Since the rate of exchange between one currency to another varies, this produces a risk commonly, commonly called exposure that needs to be managed. The third one is the capital intensity. Levels of capital intensity vary enormously in different parts of THE. Capital intensity refers to the amount of capital used in businesses relative to the other factors of production, particularly in human resources. Capital-intensive industries use a large portion of capital to buy expensive equipment compared to their labor cost. The relative capital intensity of parts of the industry has three important implications for managers working in the industry, and these are the three. the barrier to competition, long lead times, and the asset ownership or management. So barrier to competition. Capital intensity can often act as a barrier to new companies entering the market to compete. Often, new companies or smaller companies have insufficient access to capital from the financial markets and banks, which prevents them from entering the market to compete with more established companies. Long lead times. Projects which require large amounts of capital often have very long lead times between the decision to invest and the asset becoming available. This requires careful planning and scheduling. For example, if an airline decides to invest in new aircraft. Asset ownership or management. The need of large quantities of capital can, in some parts of THE, can be mitigated by the fact that many companies do not actually own the assets concerned, but instead they manage or lease the assets. So, the importance of finance. Financial management is that part of the total management function concerned with the effective and efficient raising and use of funds. Like physical, operational, marketing, or human resources, finance has a large number of competing uses. It is scarce but can be obtained at a price, and it is bought and sold in markets. Financial management is concerned with managing this scarce resource so as to ensure that finance is available in sufficient quantities at the right time, obtained at the lowest possible cost, and used in the most profitable ways. So the next topic is in Introduction to Financial Analysis. Understanding the financial structures and profitability. At the outset, it is necessary to have an understanding of a business financial structure. An organization annual accounts will normally contain two key statements which we'll examine briefly, the balance sheet and the profit and loss statement. Understanding the balance sheet. So assets, which may be long-term or current assets, are financed and matched in a balance sheet by the capital and liabilities. Liabilities may be current, less than 1 year, or long-term, over 1 year. So understanding the profit and loss account. The profit and loss statement matches the revenue earned in a period with the costs incurred in earning it. The source of corporate funding. Financial resources, as we already learned, are the essential input to strategic development. Capital for development can be raised from several sources, and these are summarized here. Capital. When we say capital, capital is the money that is used to invest in business, to buy new equipment, to new capacity, extra aircraft, or etc. Share capital for limited liability companies. A sizable proportion of capital is raised from shareholders or the financial owners to the company in the form of share capital. And the right issue capital. From time to time, a company may seek to increase its capital for expansion by means of right issues. This is when a company issues new shares to the stock market, normally giving its own shareholders the first refusal pro rata with their current proportion of the company's share volume. The next one is the written profit as source of capital. Shareholders provide other funds for development by agreeing not to receive all the company's profits in a given year. Retained profit, the element of operating profit not paid to shareholders in a form of dividend, is arguably the most common method of funding strategic developments, particularly in the company is quite old in terms of years of operation. Loan capital. Loan capital is an important consideration in the use of retained profits to fund corporate development. Is clearly the ability of the company to actually make a profit that can be, or at least in part, distributed to shareholders as dividends. While a company may make a profit from its normal activities after taxation, some profits may be required to meet the costs of other forms of debt finance loans. Debt finance is shown in a balance sheet under two headings: creditors, amounts falling due within 1 year, and the amounts falling due after one or more than year. Comparison of share capital and loan capital. Each of the types of a capital described above its pros and cons. Share capital as the advantage. The amount paid in the capital is dependent upon company results. A company can decide not to pay a dividend if profits are poor in any given year. Loan capital, by contrast, must normally be serviced regardless of results, in much the same way that the mortgage of a house must be repaid regardless of other commitments. The other sources of capital. While the foregoing are the most common mechanisms of raising capital for development, the others are available under some circumstances. One such method is to dispose of existing fixed assets. This can range from the selling of an aircraft, a hotel building, or a performance venue to selling subsidiary or to a third party. Cost capital. Availability of capital, or where to get it from, is one issue when examining a company's capital funding. But another equally important consideration is cost. The cost of capital can be seen as a minimum return required to the company's assets, which in turn may influence the objectives of a company. At its simplest, the cost capital can be viewed as the annual amount payable or as a percentage against the principal amount of money. Cost of debt capital. The cost of debt capital are relatively easy to calculate as they tend to correspond closely to a prevailing rate of interest. The third one is the cost share capital. Calculating the cost of share capital is slightly more complex as it contains more variables. Accounting academics spend a great deal of time discussing what should and should not be included in the calculation and how each component should be weighted. Reasons for this complexity include the indefinite nature of the funding, the opportunity costs of the undistributed profits, and the shareholders' expectations. Why calculate the cost of capital? The cost of capital is usually an important figure to calculate because if it works out to be too high, the development that it is intended to fund may not be viable. Given that both debt and share capital attract servicing costs, the profit returns must exceed these servicing costs to the extent that the proposal is economically attractive. Financial analysis. We would usually employ an analysis of a company's financial situation as part of an internal strategic analysis. In the same way as we consider other functional areas of an organization in relation to its operations, human resources, and marketing, it is necessary to understand a company's finances in order to make assessments of its health or its readiness to undertake phase of strategic development. The three key areas of financial analysis are the longitudinal analysis, or also sometimes called trend or time series analysis, the cross-sectional analysis or the comparison analysis, and the last one is the ratio analysis. So what is longitudinal analysis? The simplest means of assessing any aspect of a company's finances is to compare the data for 2 or more years and see what has increased and decreased over the time period, and by how much. It goes without saying that the further back in the time we look, the better idea we will get to as its current position in its historical content. Many company corporate reports provided a 5 or 10-year record, and this can help us in constructing a longitudinal analysis. What is cross-sectional analysis? While longitudinal while cross-sectional analysis While longitudinal analysis help us to assess performance within the context of historical trends, it tells us nothing of the company's performance against that are competitors or of similar companies in other industries. Intercompany comparison or financial benchmarking is a variation of cross-sectional analysis. It usually involves an analysis of like companies, usually in the same industry, but it can sometimes be an inter-industry analysis. In order to make the benchmarking analysis meaningful, the company selection should usually be guided by similarity in terms of company size, industry, and market. Benchmarking is now used to compare the effectiveness of various processes, products, and procedures against others. The benchmarking process therefore involves the following decisions. What are we going to benchmark? Who are we going to benchmark against? How will we get the information? How will we analyze the information, and how will we use the results? And the last one is the ratio analysis. The third important tool in the analysis of a company performance is the ratio analysis. A ratio is a comparison of two items from the same set of accounts. Ratio analysis is an area of some academic debate, and accordingly the way in which ratios are expressed may vary between accounting and strategy textbooks. For most purposes, we can divide ratios into 5 different broad categories. The first is the performance ratios, efficiency ratios, liquidity ratios, investors ratios, and the last one is the financial structure ratios. So when we say performance ratios, as their name suggests, performance ratios tests how to see how well a company has turned its inputs into profits. This usually involves comparing return against either turnover or its capital. This is because the rates of tax and interest payable vary. Using profit after interest and tax would distort the performance figure. The second one is the efficiency ratios. These ratios shows how efficiently a company has used its assets to generate sales. We can use one of the number of a company's inputs to test against sales or profits. Common efficiency ratios include sales per employee and profit per employee, both of which test is efficiency with which a company uses its labor inputs. The third one is the liquidity ratios. These ratios test the company's ability to meet its short-term debts, an important thing to establish if there is reason to believe the company is in trouble. Essentially, they ask the question, has the company enough funds to meet what it owes? The current ratio is the best known liquidity ratio. It is measure of a company's total liabilities in comparison to its total assets and it's calculated entirely from balance sheet figures. The acid test ratio is a variant of a current ratio and tests the company's ability to meet its short-term liabilities using its cash or near cash assets. Investors' ratios. The family of ratios tests for aspects of a company's performance that are important to a company investors, usually its shareholders or potential shareholders. There are 3 that are widely used. Earnings per share are calculated by dividing profit after interest and tax, called earnings, by the number of shares. It shows how much profit is attributed to each share. The price-earnings ratio gives an indication of the stock market's confidence in a company's shares. And the dividend yield is the third widely used investors' ratio. Potential shareholders often want to know what's the most recent return on the share that was in terms of percentage. The last one is the financial structure ratios. Financial structure refers to the mix of debt and equity that a company uses to finance its operations. This composition directly affects the risk and the value of the associated business. The financial managers of a business have the responsibility of deciding the best mixture of the debt and equity of optimizing the financial structure. Limitations of financial information. For most purposes in strategic analysis, we can accept the proposition that the data we collected from a company's annual accounts is accurate and provides a truthful statement on its financial position. From time to time, however, we may need to qualify our analysis for one or more reasons. The first reason is accuracy. While the financial statements are audited for accuracy, other parts of the annual report are not. If our financial analysis consists of an examination of the entire document and not just the accounting sections, then we would need to be aware of this. The second one is the historic information. It should be remembered that the financial information in a corporate report is historical, often published up to 3 months after the period they represent. While historical information can be used to judge past performance, it may have limited use in predicting future performances. And the last reason is the presentation of accounts. Those who prepare a company's financial statements or the financial accountant sometimes have cause to hide bad news so as to avoid alarming the company's investors. It is possible to employ legal financial restructuring so as to make sure figures appear better than perhaps they are. The foreign exchange risks and cash flow risk in tourism, hospitality, and events. Foreign exchange risk analysis. Given the nature of its products, many THE companies operate internationally, giving rise to international flows of funds in various currencies. Tour operators, airlines, hotel groups, and cruise operators, and many events management companies. Thus, foreign, foreign exchange management is very significant for many THE businesses. The lack of stability caused by the continual changes in exchange rates between currencies creates uncertainty. Specifically, uncertainty is created as to what foreign income will be worth when it is received, what payments will cost when they have to be made, and what the value of foreign assets and liabilities might be in the future. We can identify three different types of foreign exchange risk or exposure. A company may be faced with transaction, translation, and economic exposure, which are defined below. Transaction exposure. Transaction exposure relates to the foreign exchange exposure which contracts have already been entered into. When a company has contracted to receive or pay an amount of money in a foreign currency at the same time, in the future a risk is incurred. The second one is the translation of exposure. The next one is the translation exposure. Translation exposure arises on the consolidation of assets, liabilities, and profits denominated in foreign currency in the process of preparing consolidated accounts. And the third one is the economic exposure. Economic exposure, or sometimes referred to as political exposure, arises from effect of adverse exchange rate movements on future cash flows, where no contractual arrangement to receive or pay money has yet been made. This kind of exposure, which is longer term in nature and often difficult to quantify exactly and forecast accurately. So the Cash flow analysis. Cash flow. When we say cash flow, the term cash flow refers to the net amounts of cash and cash equivalents being transferred in and out of a company. In terms of cash management, tour operators, event managers, travel agents, and airlines, for instance, are typically quiet, low margin businesses. They often derive important parts of their income not operating profits or through the selling of their service, but for the interest income derived from the investing cash surpluses they may be holding at certain times of the year. Analyzing cash flow is an important strategic task which can provide a lot of information on how a company is trading at a time and to indicate likely future problems. In analyzing the cash flow, it may be necessary to first insert all known income and payments for each period onto a cash flow schedule. Second, total income and payments to produce a balance carried forward to the next period. The third one is to forecast future cash flow using available information. The fourth one is to produce sensitive analysis. And the last one is to produce a graph showing monthly or weekly balances to help eradicate trends. Analysis of the cash flow should prompt certain questions such as how easily predictable are the cash flows? How seasonal or cyclical are the cash flows? Can a company keep within its borrowing limits? Is the company generating enough cash to ensure its survival? Does the company require further credit facilities? How long does it take customers to pay the company? And how quickly does the company pay suppliers and others? So that's all. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. This is Charmaine Nicole Umayan, and I will be discussing the topic the products and markets context. So, the products and markets context. This chapter examines the final part of the functional aspects of the organization, which is products and markets. So, the way in which an organization relates to its markets is one of the most important aspects of competitive strategy. So, the idea of markets as a place where buyers and sellers come together can apply to both inputs and outputs. Product markets are those in which an organization competes for sales, while resource markets are those in which an organization competes for its resource inputs. So we will be discussing the key elements of this system. This is the nature of markets and the nature and importance of products in the contexts. So the way in which an organization configures itself in respect to these elements is crucial to the success of business strategy. So strategic marketing for competitive advantage. The way in which an organization's products relate to its markets is one of the most important aspects of competitive strategy, the aim of which is to gain a competitive advantage over competitors. So an organization may have great technical and operational capabilities, but these capabilities only become a source of competitive advantage when such distinctive capabilities are applied in the marketplace. So hence it is of critical importance that managers are able to define and understand the markets in which they are operating, and the next section considers various ways in which markets can be defined. So, the importance of understanding markets. It is important, before going on to consider how organizations approach their markets, to consider exactly what we mean by the term markets. So, economists refer to a market as a system compromising with two sides. The first one would be the demand side. It compromises buyers or consumers of a product or service, and the other side would be the supply side. This produces or operates products and services. Why is understanding of markets very important? It is because it gives managers an indication of the demand and potential demand for an organization's products and services. It also allows managers to assess the potential for market growth and gaining market share over competitors. It also enables managers to recognize and evaluate the number, type, and capabilities of competitors. And lastly, It enables managers to position products and services in the market so that they're able to develop and sustain their competitive advantage. So, what is market attractiveness? Managers often consider the attractiveness of a market. They consider whether products offered in a particular market will deliver returns on investment that are attractive to the organization and its investors. What is a market size? So, in general terms, the larger the size of a market, the more attractive it will be in that it will offer wider opportunities for a larger number of organizations. Such a market, however, will also attract powerful suppliers who will attempt to dominate it by gaining a high market share. So, for example, the market for mass holidays to Spain from Northern Europe is large, and consequently it is supplied by a large number of tour operators, whereas the market for activity holidays for European teenagers is far more smaller and is consequently supplied by fewer companies. So, what is market growth rate? A growing market is normally more attractive than a static or declining market, since growing markets allow opportunities for businesses to expand in line with the growth of the market. In static or declining markets, growth for individual organizations can only be achieved by taking market share away from competitors, which can be expensive and may lead to lower margins. What is supplier concentration? So, supplier concentration means that your company is making most of its purchases from a few key suppliers. So, there is no universal guideline on what would be considered a reasonable level of supplier concentration. However, if you are purchasing about 40% from the supplier, this might be considered too high. So, it is a very common situation for small or privately owned businesses, as a sourcing from fewer trusted business partners can save a lot of internal resources. So, defining markets. What is market? So, the definition based on a product, if someone working for an organization is asked what market they're in, a common reply will be to describe the products sold. So, for example, holidays are conferences and exhibitions. So, if the product definition is wide, this type of definition is close to describing an industry, since government economic statistics are often produced on this basis. And markets defined in this way often have the advantage of ease of measurement. So, market definition based on need satisfaction or function performed. So this one, the reason why consumers purchase a goods or service is to gain utility. So the concept of utility infers that whenever a consumer makes a purchase, they make a cost-benefit calculation, making the judgment that the benefit they will get from the product is worth more than the price they paid. Another one would be definition based on customer identity. Groups of customers have requirements in common and differ from other groups of customers. In this way, the identity of customers can be used to define markets. For example, we could consider the business travel market as a quite distinct market. The market might be for products as diverse as airline flights, hotel rooms, meeting and exhibition spaces, event management services, car hire, and etc. But the market could clearly be seen as a market for types of travel, hospitality, and ancillary services needed by those traveling away from their office or for business purposes only. One also would be combined definition. In practice, most businesses serve several markets with a range of products. So they will be defined with their markets as a combination of the ways listed here, and to the extent that one or another approach is uppermost, the advantage and disadvantage that we have already encountered will apply. So what is market segmentation? So there are 4 approaches for market segmentation. This is undifferentiated marketing, differentiated marketing, concentrated marketing, and customized marketing. So market segmentation can be viewed as a sector of the overall market in which competitions take place. The marketer is concerned with identifying subsets of people with similar needs and characteristics that lead them to respond in similar ways to product offerings. So what is geographic segmentation? This form of segmentation addresses the question of where they buy. An organization may segment its markets according to the geographic location of its consumers. Similarly, it is also useful to be able to make distinctions between affluent and poor areas and between various types of urban and rural areas. What is psychographic segmentation? So this one has been used in marketing research as a form of market segmentation which divides consumers into subgroups based on shared psychological characteristics, including subconscious or conscious beliefs, motivations, and priorities to explain and predict consumer behavior. What is geodemographic segmentation? So this is a multivariate statistical classification technique for discovering whether the individuals of a population fall into different groups by making quantitative comparisons of multiple characteristics with the assumption that the differences within any group should be less than the differences between groups. Behavior segmentation. In behavioral segmentation, buyers are divided into groups on the basis of their knowledge, attitude, use, or response to a product. So this is about understanding consumers not just by who they are, but by what they do, using insights derived from customers' actions. What is business-to-business marketing? So this one refers to the marketing of products or services to other businesses and organizations. So according to the widely cited model of Banoma and Shapiro from 1983, the business-to-business marketer typically segments organizations broadly classified in 2 major categories. So one would be macro segmentation and the other one would be micro segmentation. So macro segmentation centers on the characteristics of the buying organization and situation, thus dividing the market by such organizational characteristics as size and geographical location. While micro segmentation requires a higher degree of market knowledge and focuses on the characteristics of decision-making units within the macro segment, including buying decision criteria, perceived importance of the purchase, and attitude towards vendors. What is targeting? So this one, the selection of potential customers to whom a business wishes to sell products or services. When the possible range of segment has been identified and the characteristics of each of the segments has been analyzed, the organization then has to decide which market segment to target. The importance of characteristics. So market size and market growth. Each segment should be large enough or demonstrating growth potential. So for example, it would probably be possible to construct and promote hotels solely for people in wheelchairs. But would this be a substantial enough segment of the population to ensure success? So the accessibility. Each segment should be reachable. in the sense that it should be possible to give the consumers in that segment appropriate information about the organization's products. So example with this is a coach or a bus operator finds that most customers are single and aged between 18 to 35, but unless they live in certain geographical areas, there may be difficult to reach cost effectively. So measurability. Each segment should be measurable. For example, many people in deciding upon their holiday do so in the expectation of receiving certain benefits such as peace and relaxation or a lively nightlife, but it is difficult to measure such motivations, especially when sometimes people are unwilling to answer personal questions in an honest manner. So next would be actionability. Each segment should be actionable, and that cost-effective programs can be formulated for servicing the segments. For example, a small airline identifies 7 market segments, but its staff and financial resources are too small to develop separate cost-effective marketing programmers for each segment identified. So recognize the products as being made up of 5 levels. The core product. This is the main benefit which the customers gain when purchasing the product. Second would be the generic product. It is a basic version of the product, and it refers to the features of the product that are purchased. Third is the expected product. This represents a set of attributes and conditions that buyers normally expect and agree to when purchasing a product. Fourth is the augmented product. This goes beyond the customer's expectation to provide something extra and desirable. And lastly, the potential product. It includes all the augmentation and transformations that the product might ultimately undergo in the future, whereas the augmented product describes product features included in today's product. The potential product represents the possible evolution of this certain product. So what is maturity stage? Maturity is reached when a high proportion of people who will eventually purchase a product have already purchased at once. So in order to maintain and protect their position in a mature market, companies have to be vigilant in detecting changes taking place. What is declining stage? It is part of a product life cycle theory that makes that means that all markets will eventually decline, and therefore companies have to be ready to move to new markets where decline is felt to be inevitable. The importance of new products. So new products can provide the mechanism whereby further growth can take place. Increasing competition, often itself coming from new or modified products, means that innovation is frequently not an option, but a necessity for many companies operating in all sectors. So product portfolio theory. The notion of a portfolio exists in many areas of life. So not just for products. Underpinning the concept is the need for a business to spread its opportunities and risks. So conversely, a narrow portfolio implies that organizations only operate in a few or even one product or market sector. So this is from the Innovators Toolkit from Harvard Business Essentials. It goes like, the creative process is fueled by divergent thinking, a breaking away from familiar or established ways of seeing and doing. So this ends my discussion today. So thank you for listening and have a good day.